So I want to talk a little bit about the mechanics of a deadlift. But in order to understand the mechanics of deadlift, you have to understand the balance point of the body. And the balance point of the body, in this case, will be the midfoot. So it's not the middle of the midfoot, it's if these shoes had bows on them, it would be right here. So if you keep the plane of motion above the midpoint balance, the fulcrum of the foot, that means that all your muscular effort will be devoted to picking up the weight and not trying to stabilize the weight. Your body will just use as much energy as it needs to stabilize, but the vast majority of your effort will be then geared towards lifting the weight. So I found that the easiest way to do this is if I have a little setup like this, if I'm going to be doing free weights. The first time I do a deadlift, I always do a deadlift with an empty bar, just to get the neurological pattern down and just to make sure that nothing is tweaking in my body. So, and I also need the little plastic step because I'm only 5'3", and the diameter of the weights means that I won't get as full a range as I'd like. So, but in this case, in the empty bar, it doesn't really matter. So what happens again? If the balance point of the body is the midfoot, you want to keep the plane of motion above the midfoot. So in this case, my feet are parallel, slightly wider than shoulder width. As I come down, I'm going to break at the hip first, visualize the bar coming from my midfoot. At the bottom, I mentally check the alignment of my spine so that it's straight from my sacrum all the way to the base of my skull. And then from here, I'm standing straight up, pushing through my whole foot. The bar will graze across my knees, and then I'll try and slightly retract my shoulder blades. I'm not going to retract my shoulder blades to the point where I'm hyperextending my low back, but just standing straight up and then pulling the shoulder blades back. So from here, as I reverse the motion, I break at the hip first, knees bend, my spinal alignment stays the same, and down. So basically, it's just this motion. You're standing straight up, pushing through the whole foot. You're not trying to jerk it up and lean back. The point of this is trying to maintain that balance point and keeping the bar in the plane of motion above the midfoot. Okay. All right, so I'm going to put a little weight on, and then you'll see why I have this set up the way it is. So when there's no weight on the bar, it's relatively easy to keep the bar above the plane of the midfoot because it's light enough where there's not really that much effort. So the only thing I'm focusing in on as I'm doing it with no weight is making sure that I'm not feeling any weird little tweaks or pains in my body. But now when I put a little weight on, it's going to be a little bit different. So first off, I am going to set the weight in the little plastic stands. So with the weight in the plastic stands, what ends up happening is because of the circumference of the weight, it'll lock it into a certain position on the plastic stands. So now with the bar in place, what I'm going to do is I'm going to position my feet so that when I look down at my feet, the bar is exactly in the midfoot. So now all I have to do is make sure that the bar stays in the plane of the midfoot. As I do that, okay, I start off at the bottom. First, I mentally check the alignment of my spine. Even though I don't have any weight on me right now, I'm still treating this movement as if I was holding weight. Because it's not so much about the weight, it's the motor pattern. I want to keep on practicing this motor pattern so that my body, as soon as I try and bend down, will automatically align the spine and put everything else into place. So as I come down, once I plant my feet, I don't move my feet. Okay, I grip slightly on the outside of the bar, and the initial grip that I tend to use is a pronated grip, and I'll alternate that sometimes this way. And then when it gets really heavy, I will alternate one hand pronated, one hand supinated. But I will alternate. I'll do a couple reps this way, and then a couple reps this way. The reason why is because it changes the alignment of your shoulder blades as you move. Okay. So the other thing, your primary point of failure on the deadlift will always be your grip, because you'll never be able to hold as much weight in your hands as you're going to be able to lift with your legs. But anyway, without getting needlessly complicated, so I break at the hip first, bend the knees down. The bar will basically graze against my shins. As I look straight down, I see the bar is exactly mid-foot. Again, if these shoes had laces, they would be covering the laces, or the bows of the laces, rather. And then from here, I mentally check the alignment of my spine. I retract my shoulder blades slightly as if I'm sticking my chest out. And my gaze is just straight down. I'm not hyperextending my neck back this way, because I've noticed that if I tend to do this, that increases the chances of me personally trying to hyperextend my spine. So I just try and keep this angle as straight and simple as possible. So from here, I mentally check the alignment of my spine, and then I push through my whole foot and I stand straight up. So I take a breath, and then I reverse it. I make sure the shoulder blades are back, and then boom, break at the hip, keeping the bar in the plane of the midfoot and down. I put the bar all the way down, and then I reset the spine. It's called a deadlift because you're basically starting from a dead stop, and you're picking it back up. So there's no opportunity for a stretch reflex bounce, which is why it's even more important to, every time you set the bar down, mentally check the alignment of your spine, keep the shoulder blades back, push through your whole foot, stand up. And then with these little plastic stands in the way, every time I put the weight down, it auto-corrects so that the bar stays in the same place. If these weren't there, the barbell itself could roll a little bit, and that could mess a little bit with the alignment of the bar. And I want to keep the bar, again, in the plane of the midfoot. So, from here, I just crank out my sets, standing straight up, back. Each time, again, I mentally check the alignment of my spine and up. Okay. So then a variation of that is, instead of having both hands pronated, I'll have both hands supinated. As I supinate my hands, what that does is that takes my shoulder blades and pulls them back more. So it's easier to keep the spine straight. But same rules apply. Once you've planted your feet are there, the bar stays in the plane of the midfoot. As I put more weight on there, I will reverse the grip, because when your grip is reversed, what ends up happening is one hand will torque the bar towards you, the other one will torque it the opposite way, so that serves to stabilize the bar. At this weight, it's not really necessary to do that, but if you were to do that, do the deadlift with one hand pronated, the other hand supinated, I would do a few sets this way, and then reverse it, and then do a few sets, same number of sets, the other way, so that the motor pattern is balanced out on both sides. And again, if I were actually taller, I wouldn't need to worry about the little plastic step, but because of the radius of the weight, in order for me to get a better, fuller range, I have to step on the lucky special plastic thing. Because I'm mighty, mighty Thor. Okay. Ultimately, this is how you want the deadlift to be on free weights. Because then you have to worry about the y-axis, straight up and down. The x-axis, as you sway back and forth to try and keep it in the plane of the midfoot. And then the z-axis, which is side to side. But if this is initially too difficult, what I do is then I eliminate one of the axes of rotation. So in order to do that, I'm just going to come over here. All right, so I'm going to eliminate one of the axes of rotation. I refer to this as a two-axis Smith machine. I don't know if that's what it's called, but same rules apply. So again, I look down, I set the bar so that the bar is midfoot. Again, I break at the hip first, come down, and then I push to the full foot, stand straight up. Okay. Because the z-axis is eliminated in this particular machine, it's a little bit easier. Because then all I have to do is focus on two axes of rotation. The y-axis, straight up and down, and then the x-axis, which means the sway back and forth. And if I were a little bit more ambitious, I'd probably put a step here, because I can't lower the bar any further than it is. So if I can't lower the bar to increase the range of motion, I have to raise the ground, which is why I would use that plastic step. So, this is the two-axis Smith. When I start off people, showing them how to deadlift, and if either they're a little bit older or they're just not used to physical motion at all, I start them off at the one-axis Smith, which is over here. The one-axis Smith is nice because there's only one axis of rotation you have to worry about, and that's the y-axis. So, again, the one-axis Smith. Same rules apply. As I the one-axis Smith, the only axis of rotation is the y-axis. And usually I would put a step to raise the ground up, because this bar only goes down so low. If you can't lower the bar, you have to raise the ground. But again, when you start off, the feet stay planted. Midfoot is the fulcrum point. Same rules apply. I tend to take a pronated grip. I check the alignment of my spine so there's a straight line from my hip to the base of my head. Then I stand straight up. And then from here, again, slight retraction of the shoulder blades. So break at the hip, reverse it. Now the problem with this is people will tend to want to lean back and come up because the machine itself supports them. But you have to drill it into your head that you're standing straight up and not leaning back. And that basically covers the general idea.